A Russian foreign minister of a nuclear conflict should not be underestimated, even as Russian forces stage new attacks deep into Ukrainian territory.
There were missile strikes in the central and western part of this country, including the Lviv region where we are right now. The National Railway reports 5 train stations came under fire with 1 worker killed. This happened just hours after the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin left this country, and they used trains during their visit.
Fox's Matt Finn in western Ukraine. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is in Moscow to personally ask Russia's President Putin to stop the fighting in Ukraine. And there is more saber rattling from North Korea. A big military parade Monday featuring what they claim is a new ballistic missile capable of reaching other continents. Chairman Kim Jong-un says he is bolstering his nuclear capability at maximum speed. Twitter's board of directors under pressure from stockholders accepting Elon Musk's takeover bid.
Now, Musk has not been shy about his many plans to overhaul the platform, expressing his wish to increase trust by shedding light on how content is promoted and suppressed. Conservative lawmakers are celebrating this as a win for democracy.
Kelly O'Grady of the Fox Business Network, but former President Trump will not be returning even if his Twitter ban is lifted, telling Fox News he will stick to his new social media site known as Truth. A federal judge in Louisiana temporarily blocking the Biden administration from ending the health rule for immigrants known as Title 42. Nearly 24 states had sued to keep those rules in place. The Supreme Court will hear oral arguments in the morning on the administration's attempts to stop the Remain in Mexico policy for asylum seekers at the U.S. southern border. Lower courts have ordered that policy remain in place. America is listening to Fox News.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want with your Visa debit card. Brothers put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The body of a Texas National Guardsman found Monday in the Rio Grande River.
A somber scene in Eagle Pass, Texas, as the flag-draped body of a missing Texas National Guard soldier is recovered from the Rio Grande days after he disappeared. 22-year-old specialist Bishop Evans is believed to have drowned after jumping into the river on Friday morning in an effort to save the lives of 2 illegal immigrants who Texas Rangers say were smuggling drugs. And after Specialist Evans' body was found here in Eagle Pass, it makes him officially the first Texas National Guardsman to die in a mission-related incident as part of Operation Lone Star.
Fox's Bill Maloogian, the police officer convicted of killing George Floyd, wants a new trial.
The lawyer for Derek Chauvin filing an 82-page appeal brief on Monday, laying out arguments on why he deserves a new trial. Among them is that it was impossible to get a fair trial in Minneapolis in the wake of the climate after Floyd's killing. Chauvin's lawyer also argues several points for why he thinks the jury was unable to come to a fair decision. Chauvin was sentenced to 22.5 years in June. Chris DeMeo, Fox News.
The fight for control of the House moves Tuesday to New York's highest court. Judges on the Court of Appeals are set to hear arguments in a lawsuit claiming the Democrats illegally gerrymandered the boundaries of the state's new congressional districts. Lower courts have already ruled those district maps were drafted specifically to give Democrats the advantage. Police in San Jose, California, searching for a 3-month-old baby apparently kidnapped Monday afternoon while his grandmother was babysitting him.
She took the baby in the apartment, went downstairs to unload some groceries. In that short amount of time, someone entered the apartment and left with the baby.
Sergeant Christian Camarillo of the San Jose Police Department releasing security camera video of what he says is the suspect walking away with the baby. They haven't been able to identify him as he's wearing a mask. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hey, Mom, remember how you were telling us about the new daycare programs to help the people of Guam?
Yes, Kiko. The first childcare programs begin April 5th.
To help many more working families?
Thousands more, which means that more moms and dads can support their families and local businesses.
Like Tata Snack Shop?
That's right, Kiko.
More families working means more money for snacks?
Yes, Kiko. Families can visit guamchildcare.com for information and to apply today.
This ad is paid for with federal funds administered by the Department of Public Health and Social Services.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarte Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. The only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not today, not tomorrow, not even on Saturday and Sunday when Jose and I temporarily disappear. But we're always coming back. So here we are for another exciting episode of Tall Tales. I'm going to start out with Demi Cotney and an editorial from the Daily News that is anything but exciting. Our view, restoring tourism requires investment. You know, they've got people over there writing these editorials that have minds like steel traps.
Maybe this is the evening edition, bedtime stories.
Could be. Navigating our tourism-dependent economy through the chaos of Wuhan virus has been no easy feat. Thanks to millions in federal relief funds that have helped families survive these tough times while helping to sustain critical government services, we've managed to edge closer to the days of less stringent restrictions, maybe. Yeah, man, I'll tell you, I didn't wear my mask outside today, Jose. You know that?
You never wear your mask outside.
Well, yeah, I did. Actually, I did yesterday.
Oh, you did?
I put it on for about 20 minutes so I could have the pleasure of taking it off and going around outside with no mask. But I ran into somebody who was telling me about going to the post office back before we had that the rule that you didn't have to wear your mask outside. So this person says, you know, I drive up to the post office, I get out of my car, I put my mask on, I walk in the front door of the post office, and I can take my mask off.
Wow, that rebel.
Because you don't have to wear a mask inside the post office. But I suppose, you know, I suppose lawyers could argue about this. You don't have to wear a mask inside the post office, but when you step out of the post office, although you're technically on post office property, you're also technically outside. And the long arm of the Red Queen reaches all outdoor spaces.
Well, it's because of that kind of law or rule, the Wuhan virus was also confused and stayed away from the post office.
Exactly. The governor really threw a curve to the Wuhan virus when she set up those checkpoints on the highway. They didn't know how to get around those checkpoints. If we'd have just had more of them, we could have kind of pushed the Wuhan virus into a small corner of the island and isolated it there with checkpoints. Anyhow, let's get back to this editorial. While we submit that economic diversification is necessary, We also must remain realistic in our goals to decrease our reliance on tourism and the Asian markets that have fueled our main economic engine for decades. Transitioning from one economic driver to another won't be easy, nor will it happen overnight. This is why every effort to sustain relationships with our Asian source markets remains critical. Federal relief funds won't be as plentiful as they have been, and they certainly will not be a sustainable financial source we can count on far into the future. We must do all we can to reinforce the strongest of our revenue streams, including the ones for which we must learn to decrease our reliance. Daily News columnist, GVB President, CEO Carl Gutierrez, also known on Tall Tales as the Carl, in contrast to our Carl, outlined the boots-on-the-ground strategy his team is executing to bring Japanese visitors back to Guam by reopening flight routes, assuring tour wholesalers of our safety and cleanliness, and going in person to remind our most faithful visitor market why Guam is so good. After any period of long, prolonged crisis, trust matters more than much else. While many have been distressed over government-sponsored trips in tough times, we also must realize that we must invest in the responsible return of our tourism industry, even if that includes investing money in face-to-face, in-person visits. We applaud GVB's work and the willingness of our leadership to discuss their work in these pages, and we pledge never to saddle members of this administration with the word junket. All right, so much for that. We have a card today, as usual. And this is what we got. Of course, I got to start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. Although I think that probably some would say, Bob, how long do you beat a dead horse before the horse comes back to life? And the answer is, I will stop beating the dead horse when people in responsible positions in government and industry stop advancing the red narrative in the face of the orange facts.
Forever!
Yeah, there you go. So as long as we keep having to sort out the narrative from what's really going on, I think that the systemic racism as made known to us by Paul Zerzan is a very useful allegory that we need to keep our at our fingertips so that I can just say, well, there's the red. Let me tell you what the orange is. Okay, and then, of course, we've got some players here in the 36-34 chess game. And I've got Jose S. de la Cruz versus Neil Weir. I've got the Chamorro Land Trust Commission versus applicants, those poor souls that stood in line for so long back in 1995. I've got the Guam Department of Education versus kids. I've got Governor Leon Guerrero versus money. And I think money won that bout. I've got McNinch, the legendary Ron McNinch, also known as the Georgia Peach on Tall Tales, the Georgia Peach versus John Fernandez. And then I've got Shelley, in quotation marks, Kinata versus GWHS. GWHS stands for George Washington High School. Don't confuse that GWHS with the other one, which is Guam Woke High School, which is the Dodea School. I've left USA versus Schouler and USA versus Vallejo Madero on the calendar because I'm not done with them. We're going to spend a lot of time on USA versus Madero, the Insular cases, Neil Weir, the gaslighting, the separatists, that whole theme, because there is so much misinformation out there that it's going to take me a while to set the record straight on all those things. Okay, let's go straight to Public Law 36-34. And today I've got to congratulate the Guam Visitors Bureau. They managed to put a notice of meeting in the paper and not violate the open government law.
It's only been 6 months.
Yeah. Well, it's since July, longer than that, Jose.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's longer than that. But the old saying is, if you live long enough, you're liable to see almost anything. So when they got down to old business, they said, none anticipated. Now, that's a strange thing to say in an agenda, because if there's none anticipated, that means there's none. But it's better than just leaving it blank. And the old saying, however, is that close only counts in hand grenades and horseshoes. And then new business, open topics invited. Now, if what they're saying is under old business, they'll discuss stuff that they discussed before, but they're not going to take action on it. If that's what they mean, maybe not so bad. And under new business, if they're saying anything you guys like us to deal with in the future, let us have it, and we'll put it on the agenda. Then we've got the Commission on Decolonization, better known as the Commission on Chamorro Independence, that makes the same old business mistake. They list it in their agenda and they don't tell us what it is. And in this case, it's good because probably you couldn't go wrong in avoiding anything they do at the Chamorro Independence Commission, also known as the so-called Commission on Decolonization. And then I've talked about this one before, the Workman's Comp Commission board meeting Thursday, April 28, 2 p.m., GCIC Building 8th floor. The meeting will be accessible via link, etc. Agenda will be available at the hearing. Doesn't matter what your rulings are in the hearings, guys. They're all void. Wow. And we pay these guys, over $100,000 a year salary and benefits. And they can't even figure out.
They can't get past the starting gate.
They can't get past the starting gate. Okay, next item on the card here is Jose S. De La Cruz versus Neil Weir. Neil Weir, one of our callers here who has a tendency to say things twice. What's his name, Jose?
Pete.
Repeat?
Yes, Pete.
Yeah, Pete says that Neil Weir has a bad case of savior's complex. He wants to come in and save people from stuff that they don't want to be saved from. Like the folks in American Samoa really enjoy their system that allows them to adhere to what they call Fa'a Samoa and being part of the American political family. They do not want birthright citizenship. But Neil Weir's position is this: you will have citizenship, whether you like it or not. I'm full. Wait a minute. That's the Neil Weir, all in the name of self-determination, right? Self-determination means that Neil Weir will invoke the judicial process to get you something you don't want. And he keeps crying about if we could only do away with the insular cases. Obviously not understanding what he's talking about, because I've been through this with you lots of times in some depth. When Tina Rose Mungo Barnes took the insular cases and Congressman Grijalva's committee hearing to pass a resolution that was just absolute out of this world, right? So out of this world, disconnected. But Weir keeps singing the same song. Well, I have in front of me a column that appeared in Candid News, written by Jose S. De La Cruz. Jose S. De La Cruz was the first Chief Justice of the CNMI Supreme Court. Obviously a lawyer, obviously know what he's talking about. And here's the title of the piece: Opinion, Commonwealth's Covenant Predicated on Insular Cases Allowances. Which is something I've been saying over and over again for years and years and years. The insular cases give us tremendous flexibility that no state could dream of having. And the key part of this column says the United States, as part of the covenant agreement, was able, and by the way, the covenant was negotiated between several people who were not United citizens, who were residents of the Marianas District of the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands, representing a body called the Congress of Micronesia, to negotiate the covenant of free association with the United States. So that the Northern Marianas didn't negotiate the covenant because there was no Northern Marianas at that time. There was this group of people in the Trust Territory, all of whom were lifelong residents of the Northern Mariana Islands.
And that just dissolved. Dissolved, or they seceded?
It was a two-step process, but the Trust Territory, they were withdrawn from the Trust Territory and they became a Commonwealth of the United States when Palau finally signed its agreement with the United States for free association. The Trust Territory disappeared. So it was an interesting thing. It was not, the United States never exercised sovereignty over the islands in the Trust Territory, but it did exercise governmental authority. There was a police force, all the trappings of government, education, and the whole thing in an area just about the same geographical area as the continental United States. Hardly more than 100,000 people at the time it was created. Governed by a government official appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, who had the title High Commissioner. Wow. How would you like to be a high... That beats senator all day long, doesn't it? High Commissioner. And the Trust Territory flag was 6 white stars on a light blue field. So when the High Commissioner went to places like Washington and had a limousine, he had his standard on the front of the car. So the uninitiated would say, wow, look, a 6-star general. Better than that, the High Commissioner. Yeah, so that's how the covenant came about. And here's the key part of this column by Jose S. de la Cruz. The United States government, as a party to the covenant agreement, was able to agree to the 3 exceptions just mentioned because the insular cases ruling, which were decided in 1901 and the years immediately following. Those cases ruled that the U.S. Constitution does not apply of its own force to a territory belonging to the United States unless the territory is destined for statehood. Those 3 exceptions as to the Northern Mariana Islands were agreed to by the CNMI in the United States pursuant to the covenant agreement. And those 3 items were this. The United States agreed that the Northern Marianas have the right to restrict acquisition of land ownership to persons of Northern Marianas descent, which they did, which makes a United States citizen of Northern Marianas descent a higher class of citizen than you or I, Jose. So with respect to them, we're second-class citizens. Second provision, to restrict the right to a jury trial. The covenant says if we don't want jury trials, we don't have to have them. 6th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution does not apply, and that's the way they want it. And finally, and to deviate from the 1 person, 1 vote rule with respect to the composition of the CNMI Senate. So we know in the United States, because of Baker versus Carr and Reynolds versus Sims, the voting in the states has to be apportioned according to population. Now, before Baker came along, oftentimes districts were coterminous with counties. So, as an example, Wisconsin has 72 counties. Some of the smaller ones, like say Pepin, maybe 25,000 people. Milwaukee County, 1 million people, right? So before Baker versus Carr came along, Milwaukee County and Pepin each had a senator. And Baker versus Carr said, sorry, folks, you can't do that. One man versus one vote. And that would be the rule in the Northern Marianas, were it not for this covenant, which says in the Northern Marianas, Rhoda, 3 senators, Tinian, 3 senators, Saipan and the Northern Islands, 3 senators. Although Saipan has, probably 20 times more people than Rhoda and Tinian. But it works. So once again, the Commonwealth Covenant predicated on insular cases allowances. So I got to say it again. The insular cases, especially Downs versus Bidwell, is our very best friend. And anyone who comes along and says, we got to do away with the insular cases, either doesn't wish us well, or doesn't know what he's talking about, or in Tina's case, both. Because in Downs versus Bidwell, which is, you don't need to talk about the rest of them, because the rest of them, for instance, Balzac versus Puerto Rico, said no jury trial in the islands. But we have a jury, we have all of these rights now because of the Mink amendments to our Organic Act. So all the rest of the stuff is moot because it's been overcome by events. But Downs is still relevant because it says that the revenue clauses of the U.S. Constitution don't apply ex proprio vigere of their own force in the territories, which means the Constitution doesn't apply of its own force. Now, this idiot over here in the Easy Rider chair is going to say, yeah, that's why we can't vote. No, it's not why we can't vote. It's what we can't vote because of the design of the Constitution that assigns political rights to the states. Civil rights, primarily a national function, political rights, states. So if you're not a state, you're not going to get senators, you're not going to get members of the House of Representatives, and you're not going to get electoral votes, no matter what the Supreme Court says about, even if the Supreme Court says, yeah, we really screwed up Downs, because obviously the Constitution does apply to the insular territories of its own force. So therefore, we're overruling Downs. The revenue clauses apply. We get to vote next election? No. We only get to vote if we become a state, unless somebody wants to do some really heavy lifting and amend the Constitution so that a territory could have representation in Congress and in the Electoral College. How hard do you think it would be to amend the United States Constitution to accommodate a 200 square mile island with 154,000 people on it that is over 3,000 miles away from the next state? Kind of tough, huh?
Well, that's why we need to elect leftist leaders who will appoint leftist justices so that they can enact new laws.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't need no stinking Congress. We got the Supreme Court. Anyhow, I just threw that in there as a teaser because we're going to be coming back to this subject because it's this and abortion are 2 of the most important issues facing us right now. All right, let's take a short break and we'll go on to the next item in the calendar.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app, AUDACY. The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, next on the card, we have the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, which probably holds the crown, the title, the badge, the medal, for being the most dysfunctional department in our entire government. If you remember back in 2017, 2018, when we were letting people skip ahead in line, when the director, Michael Bora, signed a lease in both places. He signed as the lessee and as the director of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. And a couple of the land agents notified their relatives, hey, you know, you ought to switch places with this guy so you can get it. And some of the Manakilo wound up with really nice pieces of property up in Barragata Heights, one of which was raging Bisco Lee, lots that were valued probably close to $1 million. How that happened, we never knew. The commission, as you were the chairman of the commission, really though buckled down, and we're going to have an investigation. So she and the board, or the commissioners, investigated and came back and said there was no wrongdoing here. No one did anything wrong. We just did things we just did things the way we've always done them. So the commission just got so screwed up, and it hasn't gotten unscrewed since. And then, of course, there was a suit where the Fair Housing Administration, Department of Justice, brought suit against the Land Trust Commission, and the suit was settled. And the article that I have that ran in the Daily News is the first time that anybody has actually come along and told the public what's going on. Because everybody knows that if you signed up for a Chamorro Land Trust lease, you're on the list, and sooner or later they'll get to you. How does that sound effect go, Jose?
Wrong.
Yeah, that's just wrong. So here's the article. After nearly 3 decades, the contact information for many residents who applied for Chamorro Land Trust leases is outdated, according to the Land Trust, which is working on new standard operating procedures so it can resume issuing residential and agricultural leases. The Land Trust holds public land in trust. It doesn't really. If the Land Trust held public property in trust for eligible applicants, then the legislature wouldn't be able to come along and say, we're going to take this piece of Chamorro Land Trust property and use it for this, that, or the other thing. You wouldn't be able to do that with a real trust. So it's called a trust, but it isn't actually a trust. But the story says the Land Trust holds public land in trust for eligible applicants who can apply for long-term residential or agricultural leases on a first-come, first-served basis. Long-term indeed, 99 years. Priority is given to those who do not own land. The Land Trust tried to contact 201 applicants who applied before 10:34 a.m. on December 2, 1995. But the phone numbers for 107 of those people no longer work. Surprise, surprise. Do you know of anyone that has a different phone number now than he had? Let's see, how long ago was that? 27 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah, that is. But that is kind of strange. But yeah, That's a long time to hold on to a number and not contact them.
Yeah. The phone numbers for 107 of those people no longer work. Land Trust staff reported during this month's board meeting. So they had a board meeting. Instead of a commission meeting, they had a board meeting. I wonder why. Maybe the open government law doesn't apply to board meetings, only to commission meetings. According to the Land Trust staff, the law requires the Land Trust to attempt to contact those applicants by certified mail. It's been nearly 4 years since the Land Trust stopped issuing new agriculture and residential leases. The agency stopped issuing leases after the Attorney General issued an opinion in May 2018 stating the Land Trust failed to follow the law and had allowed newer applicants to jump to the top of the waiting list. The Attorney General said any leases issued to people who swap places in line are null and void.
Denied.
The Land Trust resolved some of the voided leases by either transferring bad leases to the original applicant or using its authority to grant the lease to current leaseholder if the original applicant has since died. Some bad leases can't legally be resolved, however, and the Land Trust has asked the legislature to change the rules for the transfer of leases. So I went to the movies the other night. There was a long line of people waiting to get tickets, right? Or wait a minute, I got a better one. This is a true story that a friend told me. A friend is at a supermarket, probably Payless, right? And he's got, maybe a quarter of a cart, and he's pushing up to, and then a guy comes up behind him who's only got one item. And my friend is this nice guy, big heart, and he says, "You only got one item. Go ahead of me. You don't have to wait for me." So the guy goes ahead of my friend, and then he says, "Hey, come on, kids." And his wife and a half dozen kids push 3 carts over and start to change. Now, how does that make you feel, right?
Like I'm standing in line at Chamorro Land Trust.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so those people that took advantage of something they weren't supposed to take advantage of, that kind of gets me right to the so what part of my problem-solving abilities. Sort of like, when it came time for you to get your tax refund, you shouldn't have gotten it. You should have waited much longer. But since you got it, it's okay. Yeah, so the Land Trust has asked the legislature to change the rules to make legal that which was not legal before. We did the same thing with all these outdoor signs, if you remember that. That was a Tom Atta initiative. Because our sign law from the get-go said, if you have a business, you can post a sign on the outside of your business. It takes up no more than 10% of the surface area of the front of that building, provided that it names the building that it is posted on. But you can't post a sign in agate that says, "Eat at Bob's Hamburger Joint, Gigo." You can't do that. That's against the law. Well, that's exactly what happened, including some of these electronic signs. They were illegal. And Tom Atta, through some legislative legerdemain, was able to legalize that which had been illegal and then protect those signs by saying any new signs can't be any closer to the old signs than 4 miles or something like that. So it's happened, and it's just something that should never happen. If something is illegal, legislature don't make legal that which was illegal. And that gets me to, anybody that has a marijuana conviction, that's a misdemeanor marijuana conviction, I'm thinking about pardoning those people. Just another easy way. It's the least she could do. It's like giving $10,000 worth of your money to survivors of people that died from Wuhan. because we're going way back, probably in the late 60s, if not the early 70s, we decriminalized possession of small amounts of marijuana. So if you were caught with less than an ounce, it was a violation, sort of like a traffic ticket. And you were issued a citation, you go down to the Superior Court and pay it, not a crime of record. So what did you have to do then to get busted for a misdemeanor offense? Obviously, you had to have enough to make it look like you were a dealer. So it's one thing to say, well, these folks were doing something that we've changed our mind about, and it's something else to, in effect, use the government as your anti-competition device. No competition for marijuana dealers because most people don't want to break the law. Anyhow, getting back to these leases. Classic land trust approach to a problem. Well, it was illegal when we did it, but we didn't mean to do it, so let's change it, right? Let's have the law changed. Now, the rest of this paragraph says, according to the land trust, lawmakers have not yet responded to the request. Let's give them a big hand, Jose, and let's hope they don't respond. The eligibility requirements for leases changed in December 2020. Here it comes. After the federal government sued the government of Guam, accusing the old eligibility requirements of being illegally race-based. Just because you had to be a Chamorro to get a land lease, why would anybody think that was race-based? The Land Trust used to issue leases to applicants who were U.S. citizens because of the Organic Act or their descendants. Most of these people are ethnically Chamorro. Guam lawmakers changed the Land Trust law in order to settle a federal lawsuit. Now, I brought this up ever since it happened. Now, applicants for new land trust leases, including those who applied decades ago and have not received a lease, must demonstrate or attest that they lost land or the use of land because of land takings by the federal government. Brand new rules. Existing land leases are exempt from the new requirement. The land trust staff is working on standard operating procedures. Better go through the rulemaking process on these guys. These are not standard operating procedures. Standard operating, including the types of documents that will be accepted from applicants. According to the law, applicants have two options to demonstrate whether they are or their ancestors lost land or the use of it. They can follow the same process as applicants for ancestral land claims, which means paying a private company to do a title search or signing an affidavit and providing the land trust with lot numbers or other legal descriptions of the property and the name of the person who owned or used the land. Land Trust Program Coordinator Joey Cruz, during this month's board meeting, I guess he had a board meeting instead of a commission meeting, said one issue being ironed out is under what circumstances the Land Trust should accept incomplete affidavits where applicants know the names of their grandparents but don't have any information about when the land was taken. The law states applicants must provide supporting documents or sign an affidavit and provide reasonably ascertainable information about the property's location and ownership. Cruz said the Land Trust needs to decide what is reasonably ascertainable. Is that going to be acceptable to the board because he signed it under penalty of perjury? Or do we stop there, or do we try to evaluate that affidavit? Cruz said adding the issue has been forwarded to Land Trust Legal Counsel for review. What if an individual can't get his grandparents' or great-grandparents' death certificate or birth certificate? What's going to be allowable by the board? What's going to be acceptable? A certified copy of a family tree from UOG? Cruz asked. Board members said they will get an update on an application process during May's meeting. I'm going to make a forecast that when these items come up, every commissioner will be issued a blindfold. And they will not do their jobs, and they'll open it up to a scam. Hey, you want to get one of those Chamorro Land Trust leases? Just sign here. That's all you got to do. And once again, the most dysfunctional agency on the island, I suspect, will continue to dysfunction. And let me see who I got on Green Room here. I've got none other than, come on, Stack. It's slow today. Who else but? Question on unincorporated status from another Joe. Go ahead, another Joe.
Yeah, Rob. So regarding oh, echo. Sorry, background noise. So there's this comparison of CNMI before it was Commonwealth, and we're you're saying we're kind of like second-class citizens in comparison to Commonwealth.
I never said that. I said I am a second-class citizen, not you.
Oh, sorry.
I am because when I die, there will be federal estate tax on all of my property anywhere in the world. When you die, all of your assets and property located anywhere in the world except the 50 states will be exempt from estate tax. So you got a higher class of citizenship. I got the bottom one. Got my heirs have to pay estate tax. I can't own fee simple title, property and fee simple title in the Northern Marianas. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, but basically everyone in Guam has the same status.
I beg your pardon? Say again?
Everyone in Guam, all residents of Guam have the same status, is what you're saying?
No, it depends on where you were born.
I see.
If you were born on Guam, then your heirs don't have to pay federal estate tax on any asset that you own anywhere in the world except the 50 states. If you were born in California, then your heirs have to pay a federal estate tax on any assets you own anywhere. Something of a difference.
Lucky for people born in Guam. So I was. It's kind of interesting because if local leaders change the unincorporated status, we risk losing Section 30 money. Not saying that I'm not sure that Section 30 money will be something forever, but still it's something. And regards to a statehood, we don't have enough of a population. Anyway, so when they first decided on the Organic Act, when they first got the Organic Act, the punishment that was the local Chamorro residents exercising their self-determination, and I've heard people, maybe somewhat of a dissenting opinion, say, well, it's more or less something better than nothing. And I can't think of the exact comparison, but usually they refer to I forget his name, Mr. Taitano, the only Chamorro that was present at the signing of the Organic Act, and so I think it's kind of interesting. I think his son, who is the director of some new organization or agency that they started.
Grandson.
Oh, his grandson.
Yeah.
He was saying that I guess his grandfather would have preferred having a state status, and whereas he's looking at more like a sovereign status.
Are you talking about Antonio Wanpad?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Taitano.
Oh, okay, Carlos Taitano. I don't think he ever expressed any of his views, but he's the guy that made it happen because he understood how the media operates in the United States. And when we had the little flap at the legislature, he had good friends in Honolulu who were in the media, and he had to deal with them. You guys will get exclusives if you'll run it. And they ran it, and that's why we got the Organic Act.
So he was saying he kind of was of a different point of view of his father or grandfather regarding political the status, whereas Mr. Taitano, that the man was responsible for influence letting us have the Organic Act was saying that he would prefer to have like a state status, whereas the man now I'm not sure. I mean, there's a mental block here. Tyrone, I think his name's Tyrone Taito, was saying that he probably more interested in possibly sovereign status. And I was thinking, man, respectfully, I like hearing different points of view of really intelligent people, but I would probably have to disagree a little bit because I like being a U.S. citizen, whereas a lot of people would like to be having a sovereign nation. The thing is, how would we fare? Because as a sovereign nation, you have to compete with and collaborate with the other international nations, whereas we're already Americans, which used to mean something, something pretty good.
Another Joe, did you watch the program yesterday?
I apologize, I did not.
Yeah, well, if you had, and if you've watched it on Monday, you've seen Hope Cristobal on the Monday shows.
Oh, well, yeah, I think she's a little bit extreme for. I think
she is the face and voice of the independentistas, the separatists. And she makes no bones about it. If Guam were separate, you wouldn't have to put up with white people who she told Paul Zerzan he had no business being here. He's a white person. He's only come here because of systemic racism. He's a colonizer, which is a synonym for murderer. So if you like an independent Guam, just watch that video and see if you're really sure that's where the right direction you want to go.
Oh no, I heard the video. I just didn't see it. I've heard it. You played it several times, usually on Mondays, I think.
Hey, I gotta go, another Joe. I hear the music in the background. So
okay, thanks for your time, Kabal. Appreciate it.
All righty.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Where there's put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The Entertainer. That was a great movie. I just saw it a few months ago when it came on Channel 39. The Sting. What a great movie. They just don't make movies like that anymore, Okay, so where was I here? I was going on to the next item on the card, which is GDOE, the Guam Department of Education versus Kids. And I didn't know it until I actually read this story, but the GDOE is anthropomorphic. It has human capabilities and qualities. Because, here's what it says, GDOE concerned about potential lawsuit without waivers. Yeah. Not the superintendent or
the board
or any of the custodians. It's GDOE. The Guam Department of Education remains vulnerable to potential litigation over violations of the Adequate Education Act unless two crucial waiver bills are passed into law. And I've talked over and over again, this is not the way to use the word waiver. They want to amend the law. By the end of the GDOE school year, which is May 24, students should have received 180 hours of instruction. Additionally, high school students, I'm not going to talk in terms of this service learning BS. The pandemic caused schools to close down early in the school year, and lack of activities through the community in the last couple of years has, I'm not going to talk about service learning. Bill 286-36 would waive the 180 instructional days required for school years 2020, 21, and 2021, 2022. It doesn't waive that requirement. It changes the requirement. You know, and you got to not only mean what you say, but you got to say what you mean, especially if you're writing news articles. Senators on Monday were able to place the bills on the agenda for the upcoming session. Last week, Senator Talina Nelson, chairperson of the Legislative Education Committee, attempted to place the bills on the session agenda, saying the bills are necessary to help GDOE. However, there were objections that blocked the bills. It didn't block the bills, it blocked the bills going on the agenda. Regarding the waiver bill, quote, regarding the waiver bills, the service learning bill applies to today's freshmen and sophomores, GDOE Superintendent John Fernandez said. While there may be time to address this after May, it would be helpful to have clarity before we start the next school year and inform students of their requirements. Why would you want to do that? 2 years ago, the legislature passed a law to exempt students enrolled in high school at the time from service learning requirements. That would have applied to those who were freshmen and older during 2019 and 2020. Now that we're in 2021, 2022, we have 2 new classes that were not covered by that exemption. Yet they've been affected also by Wuhan virus shutdowns. For this reason, they should be covered by a similar exemption, okay, or they will be required to double service learning requirements in their final 2 years. GDOE is hopeful, GDOE is hopeful, not Fernandez, not the board, GDOE is hopeful the waiver for the 180-day mandate also passes before the school year ends in May. If it's not done, then in the event someone files a suit against the department, we would have to address the matter at that time. There has been a concern within GDOE that the entire government of Guam would be potentially liable for a failure to provide an adequate public education as defined by the Every Child is Entitled to an Adequate, they say adequate education, adequate public education act. GDOE first started discussing the need for waivers last November. It's been nearly 5 months and questions still linger. As we have argued before, there's some clarity needed before teachers have already provided 180 instructional days, Fernandez said. Although classroom learners missed 24 days of instruction, teachers clocked in for the full hours. Well, in this case, John Fernandez, let me educate you very quickly to something that every single tailgater out there knows to a fare thee well. When you ask the legislature to change the law so that you don't have to, so the kids don't have to have 180 days of instruction, it's not what the legislature has done that you must guide yourself on. It's what the legislature hasn't done. So you can't say, well, you know, they didn't let us go, so we didn't know what to do. You follow the laws on the books right now until it's changed. All right, let's take a break for the halftime show, and I'll come back and scold a little bit more.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Don't underestimate. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The chance for the Russian invasion of Ukraine to turn into a nuclear conflict. That warning from Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov Monday, following weekend meetings in Kiev between Ukraine's President Zelensky, Secretary of State Blinken, and U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin.
We want to see Russia weakened to the degree that it can't do the kinds of things that it has done in invading Ukraine.
Today, Russia's President Putin will hear a personal appeal to stop the fighting as United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres visits him in Moscow. The Biden administration's plans to end the Trump-era health rules for immigrants at the U.S. southern border has hit a legal snag.
A federal judge in Louisiana agreed to issue a temporary restraining order to prevent the CDC from lifting Title 42 next month after nearly 24 states sued. Republican lawmakers visited the border city of Eagle Pass, Texas Monday, stressing the need for Title 42. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy.
If President Biden lifts Title 42, what we see today will be much worse.
A growing number of Democrats also urging the White House to reconsider. The Department of Homeland Security estimates up to 18,000 migrants could be apprehended every day at the southern border once Title 42 ends.
Fox's Steve Rappaport. And in the morning, the Justice Department will argue before the U.S. Supreme Court that the administration should be allowed to end the Remain in Mexico policy for asylum seekers at the U.S. southern border. President Biden tried to end it with an executive order, but a federal judge and a federal appeals court have both ordered the policy stay in place. An attorney for Donald Trump says they will appeal a judge's ruling holding the former president in contempt of court. The prosecutor in New York says the former president hasn't fully complied with a subpoena for records about his real estate holdings. America is listening to Fox News.
Hafa. I'm the owner of Guam's largest tourist attraction group. The pandemic's been very tough for all of us, and particularly for my team members. So I'm really appreciative and grateful for the PUA assistance to our team members, and more recently, the SVOG federal grant that allowed us to reopen these facilities and re-employ everyone at a critical time when PUA ended. From myself and my team, on behalf of all of us, thank you for the federal funds that allowed us to reopen.
The federal fund you provide saved many jobs. Thank you so much.
We employ about 35 technicians for our shows. Thank you for the federal funds that kept us going.
Thank you for helping with the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for helping to save our jobs.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Police say a man grabbed a 3-month-old baby from an apartment in San Jose, California Monday and walked out while the baby's grandmother was unloading groceries. Police Sergeant Christian Camarillo appealing for the public's help in locating Brandon Cuellar.
Today, someone is walking around with a 3-month-old baby that they did not have yesterday, right? So please, if you know somebody, get a hold of us. If you want to call in and be anonymous, there is a cash reward for information on this case.
Family says they have no idea who the man was. Another court hearing is scheduled today for the man accused of the slashing murder of a woman in the New York City borough of Queens.
David Bonola is accused of brutally stabbing Orsolia Gall more than 55 times earlier this month while her 13-year-old son was in the home. NYPD officials say Bonola was a handyman who had done repair work at the home and had also been having an intimate affair with Gall for the past 2 years. They say the two had a heated argument at her home early on the morning of April 16th. He brandished a knife and stabbed her, then put her body in a duffel bag and dumped it a short distance away. Gall's husband and older son were out of the state at the time. Police say Bonola has admitted to stabbing Gall and moving the body. He's being held in jail on suicide watch. In New York City, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
The White House joining in the reaction to Elon Musk's agreement to buy Twitter.
Regardless of who owns Twitter, Press Secretary Jen Psaki says President Biden remains concerned about the power and influence of large social media platforms.
Power they have over our everyday lives has long argued that tech platforms must be held accountable for the harms they cause.
Psaki says the president supports legislation to reform telecommunications laws and antitrust regulations and require more transparency. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
And in Washington, I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
We're already Pica's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing The Point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Okay, so here we are. So right now the law says kids have to have basically 180 days of classroom time. They haven't had it. So if you have to follow the law, what do? You give them 180 days classroom time. What if you don't want to? What if you got really good excuses and you ask the legislature to change the law? Then you don't have to do it, right? Well, yeah, you do. And the fact that the legislature didn't do what you wanted them to do doesn't make any difference at all. The law on the books is what guides you until it's changed. So the fact that you wanted it changed and it hasn't happened means nothing. What it means is this, that you should have been planning from the get-go to comply with the law as written as your downside or your plan B or your downside risk prevention, et cetera. So if you've already paid the teachers for 180 days and you still got to provide 24 more days of instruction, what you need to do is scare up enough money to pay teachers to do 24 more days of instruction. And you extend the school year into the summer until you've done that. That's what you do. And if the legislature passes the law you want them to pass, then you scrub that plan. But you have a plan. You don't walk through a minefield by closing your eyes and putting your fingers in your ears and tiptoeing. That's not how you do it. And that's what you're doing here, John Fernandez. Now, the story goes on to say if that's not done, and then in the event someone files a suit against the department, we would have to address that matter at that time. In other words, you're not going to worry about it unless somebody files suit. Let's all file suit. And if you took the time to read the Every Child Act, you'd find that the remedy available in the suit is injunctive relief or writ. relief. So a properly pled suit would result in an injunction ordering education officials to provide the 24 days. That's what would happen. So why don't you just do it? Instead of, well, if somebody files suit, we'll just have to address that matter at the time.
It's interesting that the one person who's been a big factor in creating this situation hasn't called everybody up to Adelup to discuss this situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe it's because it's election year and that's egg on the face.
Yeah, and of course they already took a poll, and the students don't want to do the 24 days. So why bother? And of course, if that's the rule, if you can brush off 24 days, then why not brush off 180 days? Why do we even need to have school if the time in the classroom doesn't matter? So, John Fernandez, you get an F on this one. Very, very poor approach to problem solving, and that's why we pay directors big bucks. We don't pay a director to come in and put all of his stuff in his desk and put a nameplate on his desk and show up for work and do the necessary cookie pushing, etc. A director is supposed to be a problem solver. So when a problem comes along, the director identifies it and figures out how to solve the problem. Just describing the problem and saying, well, we can't fix it, it's not why you draw the big bucks. We can pay somebody minimum wage and get that kind of performance. All right, bad show, GDOE. And Benidoso Tauto raises a question about living trusts and let's see. He wants to know if he'll have a taxable event because he was born in the States. Well, I'm not going to address that. And this is a classic case of one of those, don't try this at home. But I'm going to read a letter that I wrote to the Post, I think probably before I even started doing Tall Tales. It's been a long time, but it's still right on point. And it's entitled Confessions of a Third-Class U.S. Citizen. As a third-class U.S. citizen, I'm compelled to respond to Dylan Kiyoshi's recent letter decrying the oft-repeated shibboleth of the second-class status of territorial citizens. That's the Neil Weirism, too. Why are we second-class citizens just because of our zip code? Having been born in the States, when I die, my estate will be liable for federal estate tax on all assets anywhere in the world. That's Internal Revenue Code 2208. But if I were born here, assets held on Guam or anywhere else in the world except the States would not be taxed. Being a person of Northern Mariana's descent is an even more beneficial class of U.S. citizen. The tax advantage, plus ownership of realty and fee simple in the islands, is attainable only by those of Northern Mariana's descent, but not those of us born in the States. Back home, there are Guam laws on the books for registration in the Chamorro Decolonization Registry and eligibility for leases in the Chamorro Trust, Land Trust, which are available only to those who became U.S. citizens by virtue of the authority and enactment of the Organic Act, or descendants of such persons, but not those of us who were just born in the States. All three classes of U.S. citizens can vote in every election held where they live, run for office, serve on juries, etc., and enjoy the full panoply of the rights of citizenship. And if a local resident moves from Guam to a foreign country, never intending to return, the former resident can still vote absentee on Guam because of the Uniform and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, also referred to as UCAVA. The Congressional Research Office has even held that one born on Guam is a native-born citizen and eligible to run to be president of the U.S. Dylan, like all of us, has been bombarded with numerous myths sounding in identity politics, such as we are second-class citizens. We're statutory, not constitutional citizens. Because of the insular cases, we can't vote for president. There are only three options for decolonization of the island, and that Gov Guam is working towards decolonization. These are all myths. Gov Guam is not working towards decolonization. Even this very newspaper published a myth. On August 9 last year, Manny Cruz reported, quote, after World War II in 1946, Filipino laborers arrived in Guam to construct U.S. military bases, and Camp Rojas was established. In 1950, the Organic Act passed, granting American citizenship to all people residing in Guam at the time. No. More of the quote, I think the tensions many Chamorros had against Filipinos were valid. Camp Rojas, for one, was meant to be a calculated threat against Chamorro self-determination back in 1946. This is Josephine Faith Ong, who wrote this letter to the Post. Okay, the passage of the Organic Act made no one in Camp Rojas a citizen. A person had to be born here before 1950 to qualify. Just being here wasn't enough. And in the 1950s, Camp Rojas was calculated threat against Chamorro self-determination. Wow. The separatist mind at work, right?
Calculated.
Yeah. Given that we live in a time when serious discussions concerning nationalism, statehood, self-determination, patriotism, national defense, self-government, racism, decolonization, home rule, hegemony, etc., require serious discussion, none of us is well served by mythic distractions grounded in identity politics. Second-class citizens. I confess that my third-class citizenship and the aforesaid distractions bother me not a whit. I'm happy to be a citizen of the greatest country ever, no matter what class of citizenship is created by our national or local government. The right to freedom of speech, freedom of press, religion, and to petition the government for redress of grievances, plus the freedom that is only available under the rule of law, are available in America like no other place. One of the luckiest days of my life occurred 55 years ago when a Gov Guam recruiter invited me to come here to be a school teacher. Because of that luckiest of days, I have been able to spend the bulk of my life residing at the epicenter of Chamorro culture. This is it. Custom and tradition under a flag that I cherish in a society that I will continue to celebrate till it's time for my final confession. So, I hope that helps you, Benedoso Tauto. I'm not going to give you estate planning advice on my talk show. I wouldn't do it even if I could. And don't try this at home. But the takeaway from this is that the U.S. income tax does not apply to people living on Guam. U.S. excise taxes don't apply to people living on Guam. U.S. tariffs don't apply to items imported into Guam. Federal estate taxes don't apply to estates of people born on Guam. It doesn't apply to their assets located anywhere but the 50 states. And that's the law. Now, when it comes to building your estate planning around that, you need somebody who's got some really sharp pencils to weave his way around that. Because, my wife and I are in the same situation. My wife is an Organic Act citizen. My wife spent the first 10 years of her life as a national till 1950. And, of course, I had the misfortune of being born in the States. And I've mentioned this before, man, when I was born, I really screwed up. I was born in the States instead of here. I'll never do that again. That's
your fault, Bob.
Yeah, And my mother wasn't Chamorro. My father wasn't Chamorro. Couldn't have screwed up any worse. And I'll tell you this, I'll never do that again. Absolutely, absolutely not. So, if it depends on who kicks the bucket first. Because if I die, then, our plan would be that all of my assets, the few that I have, because we've been buried so long, almost everything we have is community property. Everything that you acquire during the pendency of a marriage is community property. It's not if the husband works and makes $100,000 a year and the wife stays home and takes care of the kids, that $100,000 is community property. However, and then my wife would be able to take advantage of the territorial estate tax exemption. But if we reverse the order, it gets a little bit more complicated. So I guess I better be the first one to go. And then the other thing that you need to know is I think the threshold right now for applicability of estate taxes is like an estate of $8 million. However, the Democrats, especially the Native American Democrats like Pocahontas, want to lower the threshold of the applicability of estate tax because too many people are getting away without having to pay it. So if the Democrats control, that number could be much, much smaller. So it's something to remember, something to weave into your estate plan, but don't try to do it yourself. And I bring it up here just to debunk this BS about people who are United States citizens being second-class citizens. There's no such thing as a second-class citizen, except as I've outlined it here. And I'm not just a second-class citizen, I'm a third-class citizen. How much do I care about that? Not at all. All right, so let's go on to the next item on the card. Next item on the card is Governor Leon Guerrero versus money. And this is an item that I plucked from the Daily News. Election Commission filings show Gov Guam's wealthiest. Government officials were required to disclose their finances to the Election Commission last week, revealing which government official had the most in 2021. The deadline was 5 p.m. Friday. Close to half of the 127 officials required to file, 61 asked for an extension until October 19. The estimated net worth for officials, the value of total assets minus the cost of debts owed, ranged from over $6 million to less than $100,000. Mayors and senators are among those on the lower end of the financial ladder, though the mayor and vice mayor of two different villages come in with net worths of over $1 million. One village mayor reported $146,666 more in liabilities than assets. So that mayor is underwater. You can read the article and it tells you who it is. Department heads and board members are found at the higher end, although the head of one agency came in with a net worth of around $32,000. Now, here's the reason that I'm bringing this up. Governor Leon Guerrero is among the richest in the government, with $129 million in Bank of Guam Holding Company stock and real estate, value estimated at $4.28 million. She and her husband Jeff Cook reported a total income of $260,000 last year. The governor's net worth in 2021 was $6.4 million, up from $4.36 in 2018. Not bad. Before she stepped into office. So, the point of this is this. Government, it's Lou versus money. And Lou has shown that money can be a bad thing. But I want to tell you that money is not necessarily a bad thing. And I'm going to tell you why. And the answer is the Bank of Guam. And I remember when the Bank of Guam started back in 1972 in a little modular building next to the what we call the Daily News building on Martyr Street, between between the Daily News building and that one-story building where Travel Pacific Canada used to be located. Yeah, right there on Martyr Street. It's just a modular building, right? And it was started by Jose Andalan and Sus Leon Guerrero, both of whom were high officials in the local branch of the Bank of Guam. Sus LG had started at the Bank of Guam and worked his way up till I think he was like senior vice president. He was the top dog here in the Bank of Guam. And in 1972, he and Antalan decided we're going to start our own bank. And of course, you know what the smart money said. Yeah. Man, the guy's got a wonderful job with the Bank of Guam. I mean, Bank of America, good salary, good return. Why in the world would he want to go off on a flyer like that, starting a bank? And back in those days, there were a lot of banks on the island. You know, at one time, we had all the major banks of the world here. I mean, at least of the U.S.
No kidding.
Yeah, we had Citibank, we had Chase Manhattan, we had Bank of Tokyo of California. We had...
Was Wells Fargo here?
Wells Fargo wasn't here, but another big mainland bank was, and I'll think of it in a minute, yeah. So the banking industry changes, but they were all here, so the competition was tough. But Seuss did that, and he built an empire for himself. But if you were ever around the guy, and I had the opportunity to sit next to him at a couple of cookie pushing events and stuff like that, and he's just a guy, just another guy, you know. He did what we expect people to do to chase the American dream. He worked hard, saved his money, developed a little capital, incurred some risk, went out on his own, started a business, and was fantastically successful. His daughter, a little bit different. I'll just leave it at that. Title of the story is Governor Leon Guerrero versus Money. If you really want to be governor, go out and spend $500,000 of your own money. See if you can win by a fraction of a percentage point against somebody that you beat in a primary who ran a write-in campaign. All right. Next on the card, we've got Ron McNinch versus John Fernandez. Let's head for Wrigley in the seventh inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Okay, so here we are. Next item on the card is Ron McNinch versus John Fernandez. And this all centers on someone I call Rugby Boy. And by way of preface, I talked a lot about cultural Marxism and wokeism and political correctness. So if you want to change the way people think, change the way they use the vocabulary of their language. So for a long time, we had words like boys, girls, men, woman, male, female. We always knew what they meant. When was it necessary to put a free prefix or another word in front of any of them to complete the understanding of what that person was? Never, right? But now you have to use words like cisgender. Oh, he's a cisgender male. Or transgender female. And by warping your thought process, by sticking these words in where they're absolutely unnecessary to gaslight you, you think there's a difference between a transgender girl or a transgender woman and what you used to call a man. But there's no difference whatsoever. The difference is in the naming. So I've got my 30-year-old Rocky out in front, right? So if I wanted to sell it, what I think I ought to do is call it a antique Mercedes-Benz, right? Which would be worth more? An antique Mercedes-Benz, a 30-year-old Rocky. If I called it an antique Mercedes-Benz, would it be the same car? Would anything be any different? Would it
same car?
Would it actually be worth any more?
Mm-mm.
So if you take a guy, right, or take this guy Levine. What's her first name? Rachel. Yeah, I think it was Herman Levine back in the day when he was a man. And you give him an outlandish wig to wear, and let him dress like a female, and he now is recognized as a transgender cabinet member. But he's not, he's a man. And the Biden administration made a big fuss because he was a deputy secretary of health, education, and welfare. He was also a member of the public health service, which, believe it or not, is a uniformed service. And they wear uniforms that look very much like Navy uniforms, but with public health service collar devices. So he was a 4-star public health service officer. And the Biden admin, oh man, look at this, the first female 4-star admiral in our uniforms. No, the first guy who pretended he was a woman that you gave 4 stars to, Joe Biden. And that's where we are now. They, meaning the wokesters, meaning the cultural Marxists, have perpetuated this myth of political correctness so that we think that you can take a boy and call him a transgender girl, and somehow this changes what he actually is. It doesn't. So here's GDOE again. GDOE, no current policies restricting transgender students from playing in ISA leagues. Okay, transgender students. In other words, no current policies that say if a person pretends to be a different sex from what he is, you don't need a policy for that. And it's another one of those, if the law is silent on it, if you don't change the 24 days law, the law on the books is the one that counts. But here it goes. Classic example. Here's the text. Let her play. That appears to be the sentiment of the Guam Department of Education. Let her play. This is Rugby Boy. Now, I saw one text that said that Rugby Boy is 6 feet tall, and he just crushed the girls he was playing rugby against. Let her play. That appears to be the sentiment of the Guam Department of Education, which is citing the lack of any policies in its sports league to bar a transgender girl from playing rugby. According to a press release issued Friday, GDOE sent a letter to the Rugby Football Union noting that both Interscholastic Sports Association and GRFU bylaws and rules don't directly address the participation of transgender athletes. I need an antiemetic here, one of those pills that keep you from throwing up. GDOE expressed concerns to the union that the introduction of new conditions and restrictions during the season could risk violating Title IX, which protects against discrimination based on gender identification. This comes after GRFU sent GDOE information on World Rugby laws, which bans transgender women from playing women's rugby because of the size, force, and power-producing advantages. Addressing community concerns, GDOE is turning to the GRFU to have referees in the game monitor play, requesting, quote, the GRU to ensure that rugby referees exercise their significant authority and discretion to ensure the safety of all matches and all athletes who participate in ISA competitions. You do that, referees, by saying, no boys. And that's exactly what I said when this came down. The coach of Tijan should have said, hey, ref, time out. There's a boy on the field. Get him out of there. And if the ref didn't do it, then Kerner should have said, come on, girls, we're going home. We're not going to do this. But neither one of them did. Kerner came out with the politically correct statement, oh, I value everybody's life, all of that stuff. GDOE Superintendent Fernandez said, this is a challenging and developing issue that rugby organizations are currently addressing all over the world. We look forward to learning more about the issue and working with GRU over the summer to set rules that will result in an inclusive, safe, and competitive season next year. Do you eat with that same mouth, John Fernandez?
Yeah, kiss your mom with the same mouth.
Horrible.
So I'm curious about this new information. Is there something revelation-ary that we don't know about?
Well, we know that boys can be girls if they really want to. Here's another article from the PDN. DOE clarifies expectations of participating transgender athletes. The Department of Ed released a statement regarding the rugby union clarifying the expectations of a transgender athlete participating in Interscholastic Sports Association high school girls rugby. The department issued a letter saying that neither ISA bylaws nor GRU's rules address the participation of transgender athletes, according to a release from the department. Well, let me just give you another way to word that sentence. The department issued a letter saying that neither ISA bylaws nor GRU rules address the participation of boys in girls rugby. Therefore, it can't be done.
Can I ride a horse on the field?
Of course.
Okay, there's no rule against that.
Well, stallion or mare?
Well, it started out as a mare, but identifies as a stallion.
I really wanted to be a stallion, yeah. Well, that's kind of backwards from everybody else. You sure it didn't start out as a stallion and self-identify as a mare? Yeah. Well, actually, the only kind of horse that would be at home with this crowd, a gelding.
You definitely ride a bull.
A gelding.
Gelding?
Yeah.
Oh, ouch.
That's what the horse said.
Nay.
We look forward to learning more about the issue and working with GRU over the summer to set rules that will result in a safe, inclusive, competitive season next week, Fernandez said in the release. The department also addressed safety concerns raised by members of the rugby community, according to the release. It requested that GRU must ensure that rugby referees exercise authority and discretion to ensure all matches are safe for all. So, that means one of two things. One, no boys allowed. Or two, if you allow the boys on the field, you got to pull them aside and say, you can't do that. You can't run that hard. You got to pretend that you're a girl when you're out here. You can't act like you're a male. This is a challenging and developing issue that rugby organizations are addressing all over the world. The PDN had a brief text conversation at 2:46 p.m. with Paul Claros, who organizes the high school season on behalf of the union. He said he would have a response later, but is headed into practice. As of 4 p.m. press time, the PDN had not received a response. How long do you think they'll have to wait for Paul Claros' response? Everybody here, here we have human beings that are not identifying as a different sex. We have human beings identifying as chickens. Okay, next item in this chain here comes from Ron McNinch. Dear Chairman Mark and board members, I would like to call a special meeting of the board as soon as possible regarding the rugby participation question. As a board member, I take exception that I was not consulted on this policy concern. Actually, Ron, it's not a matter of consultation. You make the policy. This is a matter of policy, not operations. There is a larger question on youth sports we should discuss also. I was a lettered athlete in both high school and college, and I'm an advocate of sports. I also fully support the LGBTQ community and advocate for fair treatment and respect.
Yeah, you got to clarify yourself.
Yeah, you gotta get in there and pander a little bit.
Qualify.
Yeah, you can't just speak to the issue. But as a father, brother, and son, the rights of girls and young women in our schools also need to be protected. For many years, women have struggled with incredible pressures and unfair treatment in our society. You've got to pander to every group here if you can. I am concerned and troubled by the recent statements from GDUE made to the media on this policy concern. I am highly concerned our board, which has a specific legal mandate on policy, was not consulted and allowed input. No, Ron. You draft up a policy and you make a motion is what you do. You're not consulted. You're not an advisory board. Who speaks for girls and young women in our society? I want to call on parents and family members to participate in this debate and seek to support the basic right of our girls and young women. We all have a voice, and as a board member, I would appreciate the basic respect of being informed on important policy concerns. Title IX concerns were cited as an excuse in the press release. I'm a specialist in civil rights and administrative law. I don't care what wishy-washy bureaucrats say, a rational federal judge will ultimately decide the right call on this question. As policymakers, we need to have the courage to speak up when needed, and this is a question worthy of full board consideration. Well, you're right, Ron. You might have been a candidate for a Blue Star if you hadn't decided you needed to pander to the LGBT whatever community and to the FemLibs, and had you asserted the authority of the school board, which is not to be consulted, but to make policy. Anyhow, I think the working session is the 6th and the meeting is the 8th. Obviously, those items will be covered on Tall Tales after we find out what, if anything, happened. Well, let me just check the Facebook comments here. Okay, next item on the card. This comes from the Department of Education, too. And this is, quote, Shelley, quote, Kinata versus GW High School. Guam Department of Education employee Michael, quote, Shelley, close quote, Kinata, is alleging that zero tolerance on bullying isn't equitably applied to employees. Bullying. For about 3 years, I have been discriminated against because of my choice of lifestyle and characteristics. Michael Shelley. Kanata says, my boss used it against me to bring me down. Kanata said, I'm cross-gender. Now, what on the world is cross-gender? I don't know.
No idea.
I got a feeling it's something I'm not too excited about. Kanata started working at GW in 2017, where things were okay, but she said the work environment became hostile after a change in administration. That was school year 2019-2020, Kanata said. They controlled my environment. I wrote a letter requesting for representation to the GFT over not feeling wanted. Well, that's certainly something that the union should step in and fix. Not feeling wanted. They shoved me in the nurse's office. She admitted that her attendance played a part in her situation. She explained that she was dealing with family issues. I just lost my grandparents, who I call mom and dad because they raised me. My mom passed in March 2019, and the following January 2020, my dad passed. I was going through a difficult time because within that time frame, my dad suffered from lung cancer, said Kanata, who was the primary caregiver. She said she reached out to the school's administration for help, but was turned away. Feeling unwanted and targeted in the workplace, she took her plight to the Office of Civil Rights in Washington and filed a complaint with the U.S. Equal Opportunity Office in Hawaii. Everywhere I turned to, I was turned away. Even up to the governor's office, after I presented my evidence, all I got was, you need a lawyer. Kanata first wrote a letter to GDUE Superintendent John Fernandez in May 2020. She said in a follow-up email, Fernandez, she was directed to the local EEO office where she encountered a, quote, roller coaster ride. To me, it was stalling for time. I don't know why my boss took a particular interest in me, but already the doctor placed me on medical leave due to the ongoing harassment due to being a severe diabetic and high anxiety. Her discrimination case is ongoing, is currently in the process of mediation. I went through the U.S. EEOC. We had mediation last week, so I'm currently, per Deputy Superintendent Erica Cruz, I am transferred over to Southern High now. Kanata said because I did the discrimination charge with the EEOC in Hawaii. Fernandez, in response to questions posed by the Post, said he was limited in his ability to discuss the matter. We encourage employees to utilize any avenue of relief that's available to them should they have a complaint against the department. Employees who file complaints with the EEOC are within their rights, and we welcome the opportunity with EEOC's assistance to investigate and resolve such complaints. Having said that, it would be inappropriate to discuss this specific matter in the media when there's already a process underway with the appropriate agency. But the transfer doesn't address the alleged bullying problem. Back to the article. To Kanata's knowledge, there's been no action or complaint about being bullied at GWHS. GWE could not respond to questions involving the school principal as it related to adverse actions taken. Now, adverse actions is another one of those phrases where you know the meaning of each of the words, but when you put them together, they mean something different. Adverse action in government speech means a disciplinary action. There are three kinds of adverse acts, three different. One is a demotion, means lower salary. One is a suspension, means you go home and you don't get paid. And the third one is termination, you get fired. So Fernandez can't talk about the principal at GW because it related to adverse actions. So Michael Shelley Kanata was disciplined by the principal at GW, and of course, the reason for that had to have been because she was discriminated against by her choice of lifestyle and characteristics. What other explanation could there be? The department also couldn't state whether they believe the measures and steps towards resolution taken in the Kanata case sends the message that DOE upholds a zero-tolerance policy on bullying among employees as well. Not for faculty and staff, said Kanata, who contends the policy isn't enforced across the board. Discrimination isn't the only violation, Kanata said, has occurred. She alleged the principal violated her HIPAA rights. On my letter that was attached to my doctor's note was that my medical information was illegally obtained from her office, Kanata said. That's why I don't understand why no one is paying attention to this, how come I wrote to the Human Resources Office at GDOE, why nobody is helping me. So, you know, you're out of school for a while, and you tell the doctor, can you give me a note that I could show the school officials that there was a medical reason for my being out of school? The doctor says, sure, gives it to you. You turn it in to the school officials, and then you say, they violated my HIPAA rights.
I'm actually not really clear what the complaint is.
I think you kind of got to read between the lines, unfortunately.
Because there's a lot of supposition.
Exactly, yeah. She claimed the DOE Central Office was aware of this since July that the violation occurred. However, DOE did not confirm this. They know that my boss personally went down, dropped the paper, and went back to pick it up, she said. The medical document was her fitness for duty medical certification. Which needs employee authorization to obtain. Your school or boss may or may not request for it, but they didn't even notify me. What he did was he turned it in at the front desk of the clinic and picked it up, Kanata said. She claimed the document was stamped received by GWS front office on July 12, but said she was unaware. I didn't turn it in. Why was it turned in like it came from me? Kanata said, I found out and wrote to HR in September 2021. That's when the superintendent responded. Kanata was made aware of the incident by DOE's HR department in September when officials questioned the signature contained on the document and where it was submitted following its stamped receipt by the school. Kanata was adamant that she never provided GW authorization to obtain her medical documents. While GDOE found it inappropriate to respond directly to allegations, Fernandez did explain the department's approach. In general, it's our policy to resolve this matter at lowest levels, but should it rise further than that, we will work with appropriate authorities and employee to find a mutual resolution if possible. I'm not going to say anything because I can't say anything but the wrong thing here. So I'm just going to put this one aside. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations. rates.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Where there's put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
So here we are, Churchill Downs in Louisville, home stretch. Just a couple more furlongs and I'll be crossing the finish line. In fact, about 5 more minutes, huh, Jose? Yeah, so I got somebody on the line here. Maybe I can get in one more phone call before the Let's Go Brandon portion of the show. Well, the stack is really slow today, Jose.
You got Johnny Utah on line 1.
Johnny Utah, okay. Johnny Utah, all the way from Utah. Go for it, Johnny Utah.
Good afternoon, Judge Bob. Real quick, I wanted to. I'm sure you heard the conversation on Ray's show, on the Ray Gibson show this morning, with the doctor and the director of the Guam Behavioral Health.
Well, I'm not quite sure what it was that I heard. I heard Vince Akimoto talking with someone doing a Hope Cristobal imitation. Is that the one you mean, Johnny? Is that the one you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Well, so my understanding is the director of the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness called in to defend his statement about the situation with their hospital there, is what happened. And so, real brief, I've done some research, and I wanted to address what she said. Her argument with the doc, or her trump card with him, was that they are not a psychiatric hospital. Okay, so let's look at this real quick here. If they are not a psychiatric hospital, and you are an island, and you have a population that you serve, are you saying that no one on Guam has ever or ever will need the services of a psychiatric hospital? That is basically what she's saying. And in essence, the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness, she says, is qualifying as a not a psychiatric hospital, but I forget off the top of my head the word she used. I had it here in front of me.
I thought it was community clinic or something like that.
Yeah, correct. So I'm on CMS. I'm on the CMS website, and I've looked up psychiatric hospitals, and the biggest thing that it's connected with is the Social Security Act, Section 1861. I've looked that up, and I'm reading the bylaws here. There's a big section here that qualifies a facility as an inpatient psychiatric hospital. And I don't see how this facility does not qualify for a inpatient psychiatric hospital service unless they are committing fraud, unless they are hiding the fact that they are a psychiatric hospital so that they don't have to get evaluated by CMS and qualify under all the rules, and they're actually falsifying documents and submitting payments through Medicare as a short-term facility, which it can't be true. You're telling me there's no one in that facility for a long-term psychiatric evaluation, or that is not in there getting 24, that's not under 24/7 observation and receiving medical care? You're telling me that it's not connected with GMH, where they will provide them with diagnostic and emergency medical care if a patient needs it? It's just asinine that they're saying that this is not a psychiatric hospital. I don't buy it. I think that there's something baloney going on there with that. It just doesn't sound legit.
Johnny,
that's my.
We live in an area where naming things is more important than knowing what they are. transgender women, psychiatric hospitals. Got to go, Johnny. It's always,
that's what I did.
always a pleasure, buddy.
You.
Here we go. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The threat of a nuclear conflict in Ukraine. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. From the Kremlin's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, telling a Russian TV interview Ukraine risks provoking World War III, and said NATO countries are pouring oil on the fire following President Zelensky's meeting with Defense Secretary Austin and Secretary of State Blinken.
This was, in our judgment, an important moment to be there, an important moment for Ukraine, for the war, an important moment to have face-to-face conversations in detail.
United Nations Secretary General Guterres is in Moscow to ask President Putin to pause the fighting. British military intelligence says Russian forces have now taken the city of Crimea in the Donbass region after days of street-to-street fighting. North Korea displaying what it says is its latest intercontinental ballistic missile at a military parade yesterday. Chairman Kim Jong-un vowing to bolster his nuclear capability at maximum speed. A federal judge in Louisiana issuing an order temporarily blocking the Biden administration's plans to suspend Title 42 immigration health rules. Several states have sued to keep the rules in place. Missouri's Attorney General Eric Schmidt telling Fox's The Ingram Angle.
The level of lawlessness here is unbelievable from this administration. It's a completely, open border, so it's up to the states to push back. That's what we did.
Another hearing scheduled for May 13th. The Supreme Court hears oral arguments today about the Remain in Mexico policy for asylum seekers at the U.S. southern border. President Biden had issued an executive order to end that policy, but a federal court and a federal appeals court have both ordered that policy remain in place. Firefighters across the country battling multiple wildfires as high winds whip up the flames from Arizona to Florida. A prairie fire in rural southwestern Nebraska has killed at least one person and injured 15 firefighters. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, the Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, going far beyond the headlines, tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Maria Bartiromo.
I'm Brian Kilmeade, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News.
Basic universal income is coming to Chicago.
Applications are now being filled out, and the city of Chicago will soon hold a lottery to pick 5,000 people to begin receiving $500 in monthly cash assistance or basic universal income. To be eligible, applicants must live in Chicago, have experienced economic hardship related to COVID, and have a household income at or below 250% of the federal poverty level. That's just under $56,000 for a family of three. The program right now, which is only funded for a year, is using money from federal pandemic funds. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Police in Wisconsin are looking for the killer of a 10-year-old girl found dead near a walking trail in Chippewa Falls.
At this point, we do not have anyone in custody, and I want to reiterate that people remain vigilant as there could be a danger to the public.
Police Chief Matthew Kelm in San Jose, California. Police are looking for a 3-month-old baby boy kidnapped from the family's apartment yesterday afternoon. Surveillance video shows the man walking away